Hello and welcome to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I am Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. Pleasure to have you with us today on Tuesday, July 25th. We're up here at the Neighborhood Connections in Londonderry, and this place a week or so ago was one of the 4 resource centers that the state set up, and it was a buzzing beehive of activity. We were up here for a little while checking things out, seeing how things were going in the wake of the flood. So we're back here today to kind of see how things have been going since, if that recovery is proceeding apace, and what are still some of the issues and concerns and needs that folks up here have. So with us today to help fill us in on all of that, we're really pleased to be with Nicole Wengerd, who is the Executive Director of Neighborhood Connections. Nicole, great to have you with us today.
Thanks so much.
Neighborhood Connections is a nonprofit organization that offers advocacy, education, and social services for the Mountain Towns community and helps them connect with resources they need, including health, education, counseling, crisis management, and assisting individuals with navigating their way through the social service system. So, Nicole, good to have you with us. Also, great pleasure to be joined by an old friend, Patti Komline. Many of you will remember Patti from her days in the state legislature when she represented Dorset. Let me see if I can remember them all now. Dorset, Danby, Landgrove, Peru, Mount Tabor.
You got them. Good.
Oh,
I remember.
awesome. You know, anyway, Patti is here with the Stratton Foundation, where she is a project manager, and as many of you know, the Stratton Foundation is also a nonprofit organization that is concerned about helping, in particular, children who often are the first generation in their families to go on to college, to help achieve those goals and to end the cycle of generational poverty by helping at-risk children become successful adults. So, Patti, great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
It's been far too long. Anyway, I just thought to kind of get us started here. Nicole, let me begin with you. How have things been going up here in Londonderry last week or two? What's been happening? Bring us up to speed.
It's been busy, to say the least. As you said, a good imagery, a busy hive of activity last week, and I think we were so thankful to have, we're just in the right location and just happen to have the right space where we could accommodate this resource center, which is fabulous. And also complements what we already do here, which is, health and social services. So it was great to be able to plug in our social workers with FEMA, Red Cross, Salvation Army, the Department of Labor, Agency of Human Services, to have everybody in one place, and then have the added benefit of all of the supplies, bleach that we couldn't, tubs of bleach that we couldn't keep on the shelf, and dehumidifiers and fans, and to have that all kind of available and outside for everybody. It's just been it was a whirlwind of a week. I think now we're starting to transition to the next phase. There's always those first couple of weeks that are feel like the real crisis. There's that urgency to get your stuff out, get things dry, muck the mud out. The images of volunteers just covered in mud and, showing up for a hot dog that first Wednesday where we opened up and saying, we've been shoveling for hours, and, getting drywall cut out, getting carpet pulled out, and all of that phase. That's that first couple of weeks. Now we're seeing that next phase where we need things to be dried out, right? Everybody's looking for fans, everyone's looking for dehumidifiers, and so it's a little bit more of we're seeing a more targeted need, which is a welcome kind of slow down from the chaos of, all of this variety of needs. Now just being able to say, okay, we're in the dry out phase. Let's get as many dehumidifiers as we possibly can, and let's get as many box fans as we possibly can, and get those into the field. So, yeah, I think, and also getting folks registered for FEMA. It was great to have them here last week. It's great to have these inroads with folks. So now we're starting. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's where Neighborhood Connections really shines. We're here to help folks kind of navigate these long, difficult kind of application processes, registrations, and so we're seeing folks now come in with those needs. You know, I need help, I can't access the FEMA webpage, or I can't get through to the Department of Labor, but, you know, I don't have a job, my employees need to, you know, apply for unemployment, can you help me navigate that? So that's where we're starting to transition into that role, which is what we're here for.
And Patti, what have you folks over the Stratton Foundation been seeing over these past couple of weeks?
So, over the past couple of weeks, I can't speak for that because I've been here a day and a half. I got a call about a week after the flood so let me back up. So in the wake of Tropical Storm Irene, Al Rogers and I were brought on as project managers to help with the Stratton footprint for recovery efforts between businesses and homes. If you remember, people's homes were literally wiped down the river, so washed away down the river. So we were called in for that, and we worked for a number of months on that recovery very successfully. And 11 years later, 12 years later, I got a call from Al, and he's like, they want us back. And what do you think? I'm like, I'm in, just to bring back this incredible team. And so we arrived yesterday, and where we hit the road yesterday, we started with businesses because there's a lot of volunteer network now that we didn't have during Irene, that Stratton Foundation has. So we've got volunteers out going door to door. And we've got a checklist of information to gather from them and let them know what they need to be doing in the immediate term. And then Al and I went yesterday and went to a lot of businesses in the region, because what we want to do is some quick recovery funds for people. But what we find, I did Irene work, I did Hurricane Harvey in Houston now, and now here. And remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Remember learning about that? Like your immediate needs, and then you move up the ladder. And until your security needs are met, like your food and your home, it's hard to think towards long-term recovery. So by providing some immediate money to people, they can free up some headspace so they can start thinking long-term. And so that's what we're doing now. And we had a meeting today to coordinate efforts to figure out what we're doing and see where we can augment each other and help make money go further or most effective way.
So what are the main priorities that folks need right now? Is it sort of help getting their houses dug out, or is it other supplies or equipment? How can people who might be watching this help out in some way if they want to?
I think that, like I said, we are kind of transitioning. I think those first couple of weeks, and we were talking about what was different from Irene, and has the effort been, the response been different this time around? And I was actually a social worker here at Neighborhood Connections a lifetime ago during Irene. I remember riding my bike down to the plaza to see if we had been flooded then. So, and I think it's the coordination has been just incredible. It's really that's been the big difference. And for volunteers especially, it was the same response. The response from the community was the same. How can I help? I'm here. I can. I have two hands. I can shovel. I can. Carry things out. I can cut drywall. So I think that response was the same, but the coordination of that, how those volunteers are targeted towards different projects and organized is just phenomenal this time around. Martha Dale, she's a select woman on the Londonderry Select Board, and she has just been an incredible force in this recovery, and has helped us all kind of, stay in our lane. You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, and then we can all kind of, collaborate. So I think now what volunteers are still saying, can I help, and I think that there is, there will be another couple of weeks of, folks where, a volunteer that might not necessarily have an expertise, you're not an electrician, you don't have an excavator, you're not a construction worker. I think there will be still projects where folks need some of that help, but it is relatively short-lived. It's that first month or so, and then, what we're seeing now is really a need for funding to move into things like, we have driveway repairs that are, expenses that are not going to be covered by FEMA. That's what we're really seeing, and we're trying to attack in the immediate. And those are large financial requests. A driveway to get to somebody's house, it's going to cost $13,000 to repair that driveway. you know, we can't partially fund that, right? You know, our flood recovery money comes in and we need to fix the whole driveway. We need to do it right. So, you know, that's a big request that's gonna come in, it's gonna go out. We've had, you know, in this first week, we've had $45,000 in financial requests, and all of those things are for things like driveway repair, emergency housing, you know, some mold and flood mitigation things, you know, cars. I mean, anything that's kind of will be not necessarily covered by FEMA. It's, you know, it's tricky. FEMA, it's not a straight answer. What does FEMA cover? Well, the answer is it depends. You know, it's particular to every situation. So we're wading through and kind of untangling. But I think right now, if folks have the means, you know, financial donations are what we're focused on right now, because that's going to be what we need for the long haul, to help people kind of repair and get back.
We were reminded, so many memories are coming back from Irene, and it was 18-wheelers coming in with dog food and water. And MREs. I think it's like the fruit cake at Christmas. They just keep recycling it. These MREs are probably like 20 years old. Like, we don't need any more dog food. Thank you very much, you know, Massachusetts. But it's really the money. That's exactly
it's
when you
so
ask the question.
well-intentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it absolutely is.
It's so well-intentioned.
But the money is where it can be directed best, and for longer term needs, most definitely. And we're going, and our footprints are a little different. Mm-hmm. Well, mostly the same, but then there are certain areas that Neighborhood Connections covers that Stratton Foundation doesn't, and we have a Manchester area, you know, Manchester, Dorset. We're on our way after this meeting, after this interview, to go to Manchester, because there's that one street. It's flooded all the time.
Richfield Road?
Green Mountain. It's right near
Green
Carl.
Mountain Estates, Richfield
Yes.
Road, yeah.
And 40 houses, I think, are there that
Yeah.
were impacted. So, you know, we're going to go over there and assess what we can do. And again, it's just some quick turnaround of money, checks we can get.
So folks could go to both of your websites, I guess, and find information on how they might, you know, help out financially if
Yeah, absolutely.
that was.
Yeah, Stratton Foundation, you know, .org and Neighborhood Connections, VT.org. Yeah, absolutely. And we're constantly, you know, I always say this recovery has lived on social media, right? That's where we're all, you know, consuming all of our information, and that's how volunteers are being directed to different projects. And, you know, it's just the Facebook form. So, you know, you can always go onto a Facebook form and you can find all kinds of places to donate, direct GoFundMes, or, you know, organizations like Stratton Foundation and Neighborhood Connections. So there's a lot of options. You know, we get a lot of great questions, people kind of dropping in saying, I want to donate, where can I donate? We can say, well, you have all these options. This is what we'll do with the money. This is what this person will do with money. And, you know, it's really been, we really work hard to complement each other and to work, you know, this collaboration is so important because we all have the same goal. And, you know, we pooling our resources, you know, Stratton Foundation, Neighborhood Connection, sitting down together and working, like, we will more effectively be able to get those funds to the people that need it. And so, and also those supplemental services, you know, give that quick cash now, be able to, you know, stabilize, and then come sit down, let us help you, you know, navigate through those applications and what documents do you need to get together. Let's go sit down in your living room and let's figure out what we need, you know, what our next steps are. And the mental health, you know, kind of component to this, which a lot of people don't think about, but it's devastating to lose all your things. And, you know, that's a big piece of the pie, is just having someone be able to sit down and say, how are you? Are you okay? How can we, you know, what can we do to kind of help you process what's happened and how we get to the next step? And so, yeah, all those pieces. The old adage, we're stronger together. It's still true.
And people forget, they kind of move on. Just the general public moves on, and this was kind of targeted in areas, and if you're in, you know, you're in certain areas of the state, you don't think Burlington, nothing happened. And everybody moves on with their lives, and these people don't. And I have even family members that have been impacted, and I can say the recovery, for some people, for older people, they don't recover. So these kind of resources are so important. The mental health and just the long-term support is really important.
I wanted to follow up a little bit on something you were both saying there, you know, kind of the comparison between the Irene experience and this one. I found myself wondering if we learned any lessons from Irene 12 years or so ago.
We had a long conversation about this, didn't we? About,
we did.
Yeah, some areas I will say, like Jamaica, if you're talking about infrastructure, they built bridges that didn't come down in the flood, and they said, we went down there to the market, I forget the name of the Jamaica.
Used to be D&K's.
Yes, I know,
Yeah.
and I need to know the name of it. Anyway,
Provisions?
Provisions, something
Yeah.
Provisions. But we went there, just we start doing do you know any members? So we go to a lot of the general stores because they're clued into the community. But they talked about, no, the work that was done post-Irene made it so that they were pretty much okay with a few exceptions there with bridges. But what you're talking about, furnaces, boilers, like why are we putting them back in the basement? I hear a lot about heat pumps. We should be replacing with heat pumps. We want to do that anyway. So spray foam, why aren't we, we should be doing these. It may be a little more expensive, but we're building in resilience for that if there is, and there probably will be a next time for a lot of these places. And I know the state's doing a lot of talking about that, but people tend to be reacting.
Yeah, we were just having this conversation. I was here for the first round of conversation post-Irene. I feel like, it was really, the focus was Vermont strong, we are Vermont strong, let's build back, build back, build back. But I didn't feel like there was a lot of conversation about the things we were talking about today, which was, but what about your building? Where are your mechanicals? Are they still in the basement?
Yeah.
Did we put them back? And, a lot of these buildings on Main Street are older buildings. So does it make sense to spray foam those? Can we install heat pumps? A couple of years ago, that would have been a different discussion than it is now. So, we're really looking at partnering with folks like Sevka and saying, okay, you have a weatherization program. Now let's see if we can leverage these, this program and these funds to get these buildings in a better spot so that they are, one, more, efficient, which is always a good thing, environmentally speaking, but then also they'll be more resilient, when, not if, but when they flood again. If we're putting them back in you're putting buildings back in the flood zone. That's the reality. So how do we make that less devastating the next time until we can, get a longer term plan, which may include, getting some of these buildings above flood level, like the old post office down in Londonderry. It's a perfect case study, right? It was the one building that was raised above flood level. It's the one building that didn't flood.
It worked, right?
It worked. Look at that.
I just think the slogan, build back better, build back stronger, or something. That's what we could be doing, right?
I think there'll be different discussions this time. I think there's the short-term goals of kind of get folks back on their feet, get those businesses back up and running. That's the short term, that's the now. But I think that the midterm and long-term goals, I think those discussions feel different. And I think they will be different as we move forward. They have to be. We just did this. Yeah.
One of the things I heard with FEMA's policy the first couple of days after the initial flood was that their approach is to give money out, get it out the door, and rebuild the same way.
I think there's a misconception of what FEMA. I think that folks think, well, FEMA's here. Oh, everything's going to be great. And FEMA is an incredible resource to these communities. Make no mistake. But I think the misconception that FEMA can do so much more than what it's capable of. I mean, their goal is to get folks safe and sanitary. They want to make sure that they can get you back into your house safe and sanitary. They're not going to rebuild everything. They can't replace everything that was destroyed. And, even with FEMA, it's just this incredible aid that can kind of come in. And again, like safety and sanitation, those are two big checks, really important. But the idea that they can come in and fix this devastation is just, it's putting a little too much weight on one organization. It really takes, a village to, rebuild what was. And I think FEMA's not necessarily the place that you want to say, well, we need you to make this a more resilient building. That's not their role. The role is the community. It's for us to kind of stand up and say, okay, here's our resources. How do we partner? I mean, that's what we were talking about today. How do we pool? This is my pot of resources. This is your pot of resources. How do you can put this in now, then the state resources will come in. Let's, follow up a month from now. Let's really start to have some conversations about how we can, maybe it costs a little bit more, but maybe we can build this back a little stronger. And I think that's our job, to have that discussion and push that narrative and dialogue so that, it is a center. It's not just, okay, we'll do this again, see you in 10 years. Nobody wants that.
100-year flood every 10 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Are you getting any sense that some of the business owners in particular, I'm thinking about at this point, having gone through a flooding catastrophe twice in 12 years now, are thinking to themselves, do I want to go back and rebuild a third time?
You described a case study that's going on right now here in town where somebody was like thinking they weren't going to come back, and then third generation, right? And the community really pitched in there for them, and they're coming back. So, and there's limited resources, right, for businesses. FEMA does not help businesses. We're all going to give a little bit. The state's going to give a little bit, and then the rest we have to hope. I was just on a call with Peter Welch's office, and he wants to hear from businesses around the state because he's going to try and he wants to bring those stories at the federal level, and hopefully there'll be more money for businesses. But it's tough. The only offer they really have is for loans, and it's really tough to think about taking on more debt in this situation right now.
Well, and also remember that we're thinking of this as just an isolated, this one flood event.
On top
But
of COVID.
you had Irene, flood, COVID, flood.
Yeah.
I mean, it is really just a disastrous decade for small businesses, and even with, and like you said, like the idea of taking these small businesses taking on more debt. I mean, as gracious as it is, 2%, these low interest rates, but it's like, it doesn't matter.
And if they can qualify for it.
And if they can qualify for it, it's just, it's really tough. I think our local businesses will they'll have some hard discussions.
And I assume flood insurance is not really an option because that must be
Astronomical.
incredibly expensive.
Yeah,
They can-
a couple of businesses had, flood insurance, which, if you can afford it, it's smart, obviously, and it's going to flood at some point, but it's expensive.
Mhm. The other thing I was wondering about is the role of broadband connectivity. I mean, we heard an awful lot about that, particularly in the beginning of the pandemic, as a way people were able to stay connected. Is the level of broadband up here in the mountain towns, has it been adequate to meet the need for
Yeah.
communication and keeping people in touch and informed about what's going on in one place or another, or?
I mean, I would say here in Londonderry, yes, that hasn't really been a problem in Londonderry. I think it's in the smaller towns as you get out. But there's been a big push these last few years to really get, broadband service out. I'd say here in Londonderry, it certainly hasn't been a problem, but
Cell service is a little sketchy here.
service is always a little too.
It's
I
kind of be
forgot
kind
about
of
how
sketchy
that
just about
down.
everywhere sometimes, seems like to me, for reasons I'm never clear about, but anyway. So I just was wondering, the state has been a helpful partner, you were saying, Patty, that it's been able to kind of get
So
connected to people?
I feel fortunate in that I now work in Montpelier, and so I know a lot of people and feel connected, and I've got everybody's cell phone number, and people are quick text response. You're probably finding the same thing.
Yeah.
These people were, they're, again, post-COVID, what they had to deal with economic recovery funds and grants and standing that up. And,
PPP loans.
oh my God, those applications for recovery, yeah, and Joan Goldstein, if you ever work with her, oh my gosh. And so they're right back at it now, right? And it's 24/7 for them, unbelievable. And so the quick responders, I got to say, they're talking about this $20 million GAP grant for businesses. I don't think it's going to be a lot of money for people. I think there's an expectation that's a lot of money, but going out around, it's not recovery money. It's meant to be a GAP, and hopefully there'll be more money for them. So while the state is doing the best it can do, it's such massive need we have out there between the businesses and the homes. That's not enough.
Another thing I was just wondering about, how has this impacted, children and kids? It's not, school's out for summer, so I guess there's that one part, but, a lot of our focus obviously has been around the businesses and homes and stuff, but have you heard anything about how kids are processing this and how they're dealing with it? Because their lives were also kind of upended too, weren't they?
I know my kids have been talking about floods an awful lot. We're watching them play with their ponies, and they're talking about, what's over here? Well, this is the flood. This is where the water's going to go. And you think about a child processing this information. They were with us in the car when we came up here to see if Mommy's office was flooded, and what does that mean for Tammy's house where we go to get breakfast, and is Tammy's house flooded? Tammy's house, it's Mike and Tammy's, but they call it Tammy's house. And I think that kids have a different understanding. They process things a lot differently than we do. We haven't had a lot of, I think we've only had a couple of families that we're working with individually for things. But I think it comes back to just having those available resources to make sure you're meeting everybody's needs in the family, both adults and children, and making sure that the appropriate, resources.
And semi-related to that would be housing, right? There was a housing crisis before this happened, and I mean, an incredible, look at Representative Paella, right? An incredible challenge to find housing, and now, and kids displaced, families displaced, individuals, and now with this, I don't know where people are gonna find their short-term housing. I know Stratton Resort's been really helpful in finding some short-term situations for people. Hopefully that's enough to get people into, and then the workforce shortage. So are you gonna get the contractors that you need? That's your husband, right? And he
That's going to be the hardest. That is, right now we need road crews, we need excavators, we need folks that can repair. I mean, I think the roads and driveways are, we're struggling now. I mean, we've had a few that, folks that have really stepped up and are doing what they can. But, like you said, that next level, you need professional services now, and for mold mitigation and for, contracting. Okay, my basement serve pro came and they cleaned out my, mitigated for mold and stripped everything down, but now I need somebody to put it back together.
Good luck finding them.
That's going to be a while. So yeah, that'll be the next step.
What impacted me was, so living in Montpelier now and being downtown, and I don't know, you've probably seen the videos of it, and people standing in front of and when I say a mountain of debris, I'm not exaggerating, a mountain of debris that they've just ripped out, like looking like you described, people exhausted. Their overriding concern is about making sure that their staff continues to get paid and that they don't lose them. So the shortage of workforce is so traumatic post-COVID that's what they're saying. They're standing in front of this wreck of a business and like, I need to make sure I don't lose my workers, which says what that challenge has been for them through this time. It just drove that home to me. And so there's, UI for your employees. There's disaster unemployment assistance. So owners of businesses usually wouldn't qualify for unemployment insurance, but they will qualify for disaster unemployment assistance. They do get that. That's important for business owners to know. So that's a resource. But, it's the workforce. It's finding the labor that's going to be there to rebuild and do what they need to get back on their feet. And they're very focused on, I was talking to some of the business here in town in Londonderry, on opening up again. I got to get open fast. For every week, we have a lot of applications for revenue loss that we can't cover. I think the GAP program the state has will not cover for revenue loss, and a lot of people are talking about that, getting back open and going as soon as possible.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to leave it there for today, but it sounds like things are well underway as things are working as rapidly as possible, and there's definitely hope that, eventually, given time. But I guess that's the critical factor, right?
As awful as these events are, it's you really see the strength of our communities in these scenarios, in these situations. It's pretty remarkable to see the response from our community members, businesses, donors. I mean, and this time around, I feel like because this was national news, out of state, donations. We've got so many donations and things from, and calls and, concerns and prayers from folks out of state saying, oh, we saw this on the Philadelphia News. It's like, wow, we saw this on the Philadelphia, you saw downtown Londonderry on the Philadelphia News? It's wild to see this response. But like I said, I think you don't really know the strength of your communities until you're put in these situations and you're forced to kind of act. And, I think our mountain towns, pass with flying colors, just an incredible group, incredible, special place. For sure.
Okay, well, again, thank you both. Nicole Wengerd, the Executive Director of Neighborhood Connections, Patti Komline, Project Manager for Stratton Foundation. Thank you both very much for making the time for this conversation to bring us up to speed on what's been happening up here.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you who've been with us today. Hope you found the program interesting. We'll see you again the next time. Meanwhile, take care. Be safe.